The term hand fighting is broadly defined as the strategic use of one's hands and arms to gain control over an opponent's limbs, posture, or body positioning during a fight or grappling exchange. It appears in many martial arts, but in boxing, where grappling is limited, the hand fight starts at long range, with both boxers reaching out to manipulate their opponent's gloves and take control of punch lanes. We see it most often in opposite stance matchups, where fighters play patty cake with the lead hands, as well as any time two long guard fighters face off. It looks like this, both fighters reaching out, probing, measuring, fencing, and feinting, looking for strong positions, split seconds of control, overcommitments, and opportunities to parry the opponent's hands out of the way. It is admittedly a pretty small part of boxing overall, but losing the hand fight has big consequences. It means losing position, losing control of punch lanes, losing access to your counters and proactive defenses, losing your guard, maybe even losing consciousness. It's all bad. On the other hand, if you can control the opponent's hands here, you can control the fight. To the untrained eye, it can look quite chaotic, but make no mistake, hand fighting is a system, and like any system, it can be learned and exploited. With that in mind, in this video, I'm sharing 10 tips to help you build strong positions, set traps, and earn small victories in the hand fight, so you can use and abuse the long guard and keep control of opposite stance opponents. Number 1. Hand fight from strong positions. So what does that mean? First, try to keep your elbows pinned down and in, so that they're never too far off the body, even when you're reaching out. Of course, this concept is not unique to boxing. Golfers, wrestlers, and Wing Chun practitioners agree that keeping the elbow close to the body is best, as it gives us more power, control, and efficiency in our movements.
Never is the elbow out, since you are left exposed. Though your arm moves to block, your elbow remains a fixed axis.
Keep your enemies close, but elbows closer.
In general, you'll want to fight from this kind of praying mantis position, with the elbows in and the hands and forearms up, where they can fight for inside control.
Inside control. I think myself like a praying mantis right here. This is where I want to be. Elbows in, elbows in.
This rule applies to both hands, although you'll probably be using your lead far more often. The elbows should stay pointed down unless you're deliberately taking an L guard or flipping the elbow for the purpose of a parry. Power and energy efficiency aside, keeping the elbows down and in also puts your arms closer to their start positions for punches, blocks, and posts, which translates to faster response times with these techniques. This position also keeps your lift or flip parries loaded and ready. And if you're a mixed martial artist, the carryover for takedown defense is too good to pass up.
Now you try to take a shot, I have a down block. Try to go to an underhook, I can block them off, alright?
Second, keep a bend in your elbows and avoid locking out unless you're committing to a trap, post, or shove. And even then, it's only a split-second lockout. Don't hang out with the arm at full extension, ever. Again, we want to keep our elbows close to the body for efficiency, control, and coverage, and you'll find it much easier to do so with the arms bent. You'll also find it much easier to use parrying movements in combination from here, and it's a nice middle ground between long and closed guard position, so you can easily transition out of the hand fight behind whatever guard the situation requires. Third, no matter where the hand fight takes you, try to keep your hands inside the box, so to speak.
What the hell does that mean?
This concept is very simple. Picture a rectangular box, taller than it is wide, drawn around your opponent's center line, like this. The outside lines of the box frame the opponent's shoulders. The bottom touches the navel, and the top floats in the air an inch or two above the head. Your goal is to keep your hands within this imaginary boundary as you work. This will make your feint and parry movements small and efficient, and it will keep your hands in position to guard up the middle.
Defensively, Wing Chun stresses the instinctive protection of one's center line. If your opponent's arms deviate too far and expose his center line, automatically penetrate his defenses like water crashing against rocks.
This area, inside the box, is where straight punches travel, and since they're the main threat during the hand fight and the hardest to see coming, it's a good idea to make a habit of keeping your gloves in the way at all times. It makes life much harder for the opponent and much easier for you. Now, to be clear, nobody out there is thinking about imaginary boxes during fights. The idea is to use this visual as a reference point during hand fighting drills to help you build good habits. Staying inside the box gives you plenty of room to work and time to react to any threat, and it will remind you to keep your hand fighting movements short and controlled. I highly recommend it. Finally, take the high ground. Try to get your hands higher than your opponent's whenever possible. This puts gravity on your side, making drop parries and posture breaks a whole lot easier, and as discussed here, the high hand position puts more arm and elbow in the way of hooks and overhands. Taking the high ground also creates easy openings. Anytime your hand is higher than the opponent's, you're free to attack over the top. They'll still have lift and flip parries available to them, but not all fighters train these techniques. Because the high ground is such a strong position, your opponent may fight for it, and sometimes it's best to give it up, as there is a point of diminishing returns where the hand ends up so high that it's basically out of play. Again, you want to stay inside the box. If your opponent is holding their hands so high that you'd need to reach outside the borders of your box to top it, it's usually not worth it. In these situations, I'd rather lure their hand up high, then try to punch underneath or lift parry it even further out of play. More on that later. So in summary, as a general rule, wherever the hand fight takes you, you should always try to keep your elbows in, keep your elbows bent, keep your hands inside the box, and keep your hands higher than the opponent's. This won't win you the hand fight, but it will set you up for success with good coverage, leverage, and strong start positions for almost any attack and defense. Number 2. Use punch mechanics for efficient movement in the hand fight. Fighters spend hours polishing their punch technique every week, and you can use these same well-oiled biomechanics as the basis for your hand fighting movements, like measurements, touches, taps, blinds, and feints. I like to say that good hand fighting should look a little bit like arm punching, with sound upper body mechanics, but no major rotation or weight shifts happening with the lower body. Not only are these movements polished, efficient, and right in line with the strong positions described in tip number 1, with the elbows in, hands in the box, and control of the middle, but they also look like real punches to your opponent, so they work like feints. These movements can also work like real punches in that you can use them to load the next punch. For example, you might reach forward with your lead hand in order to load the backhand, and it'll load your cross just as if you threw a jab. If that's the reason you're reaching out, to load a punch, forget the arm punch cue I mentioned earlier. You can turn the hips and shoulders into the move a little bit more to add reach and really load up on power. But do this opportunistically. This isn't something you should be spamming in the hand fight. Number 3, look for opportunities for long parries. Parrying is a big part of hand fighting and one of the quickest paths to a small victory, but these long parries are a little different than what you might be used to. Why? Not only do they take place out in no man's land far from the face, these parries also do not require your opponent to punch. You can use them proactively. Anytime you can touch their hands, you can try to parry them away, and during the hand fight, that's almost all the time. In fact, one of the reasons why hand fighting is so dangerous for beginners is because it exposes them to long parries so often. As with normal parries, you can and should develop long parries in all directions, as they each have their own strengths. Upward or lift parries create big openings for body shots, and in some cases they can actually lift the opponent right out of their fighting stance. Downward or drop parries are easy with gravity on your side, and they create big openings to the head. Outside parries provide high percentage same side counterpunching opportunities, since you start the hand race with your hand inside theirs. Inside parries turn the opponent off of their proper centerline alignment, and they can push one hand in front of the other, giving you a 2-for-1 defense. Turning your body with these parries also loads your opposite hand to counter. Number 4, attack the hands. Punch, plow, and sweep. Lately I've talked a lot about the value of punching or tapping the hands as a means of proactive defense, because the opponent can't hit you with a hand that's busy defending. However, punching the hands is also a great way to create openings and break your opponent's spirit in the hand fight. You definitely don't want to overdo this. Don't go chasing the hands, as they say in Wing Chun, as you can easily be feinted out of position. But every now and then, when your opponent tries to hand fight, give their glove a good smack with whatever punch makes sense. If nothing else, it resets the exchange, clears the center line, and sends a message to the opponent that says, you can't do whatever you're trying to do. Of course, punching the gloves is not the only way to reset the hand fight and clear punch lanes. To plow the center line, explode forward with both hands like you're executing a kneader press, driving your gloves down the straight punch lanes. Whether the opponent is reaching or punching, you'll plow their hands back and force them to start over. I also go to this kneader press option whenever I need to make space, off balance, or stop my opponent stepping in. So even if you're not a big hand fight person, you should definitely still develop this. To sweep the center line, throw your arms across it, horizontally, like you're swiping items off of a shelf or slamming a heavy door shut. If the opponent is punching or reaching into hand fight, you will sweep their gloves off to the side, forcing a reset and potentially throwing off their centerline alignment with the turning action. At close range, I use this same movement to grab a double handle and pull myself into lateral steps. So again, this technique is worth developing even if you're not a big hand fighter. Number 5, lure the hand out of position to create openings. You can lure the hand out of position using a variation of the give and take concept discussed here. The idea is simple. You give the opponent repeated contact with your glove, usually by touching it in a rhythmic patty cake style pattern. Then, once they come to expect that patty cake contact, you take it away. The opponent is left reaching out to meet a hand that isn't coming, while you attack that opening. So, for example, in an orthodox matchup, you can create a pattern of left-on-left touches with a steady rhythm. That's the give in give and take. Once the opponent starts playing along, fake your reach, leave them hanging, then explode with a right hand to the body or over the top. Now, where you position your hand for this patty cake pattern depends on what punch you're trying to set up. Basically, you want to play away from your target area. If I wanted to go to the body with my right hand, I'd try to lure the opponent into a game of patty cake up high. And if I wanted to attack the head, I'd try to lure their hand down low, always trying to draw their hand away from where my punch needs to go. We can also set up a straight punch by initiating this patty cake contact a bit off to the side, away from the center line or the middle, where our straight punches need to travel. Sometimes you don't even need to establish a pattern. Sometimes you can create the same openings just by posturing for the hand fight. For example, here we see Fury take a strong hand fighting position, but as soon as Wilder reaches out to engage and meet him on equal ground, Fury abandons the hand fight and jabs underneath. He makes it seem as though he wants to hand fight, but only to bait Wilder into a hand fighting position so he can attack the openings. Number 6, pick an unfair fight. Stretch your opponent out whenever possible. As mentioned in point number 1, it's always a good idea to keep a bend in your elbows while hand fighting, even while reaching out, as it makes your hand movements much quicker, more efficient, and more responsive. The closer we keep our hand and elbow to the body, the stronger we'll be. Naturally, then we want to deny our opponent these same advantages, which means keeping their hands and elbows far off their body. Ideally, we want the opponent at full extension, with the arms locked out, where every movement and mistake costs extra energy, and their punches, parries, and blocks aren't readily available. So that's the basic idea. Whenever you can, stretch your opponent out. Try to create hand fighting situations where your arms are bent while theirs are straight. Some opponents will give you this gift freely, usually the inexperienced ones who just want you as far away as possible, and who don't realize the mistake they're making. Others will need to be threatened with feints and punches before they throw up long traffic positions. Still others will need to be stretched out with patty cake style patterns where we gradually move the meeting point further back. The best hand fighters simply won't reach their arms out and engage in these kinds of unfair fights, but it's always worth trying. Number 7, reinforce the lead hand as needed. The lead hand will do most of the work at long range, but as you move closer and more punches come online, you'll need reinforcements to even the odds. If you task your lead hand with your entire defense, while the opponent has access to their entire offense, you're asking for trouble. As you move into mid-range where hooks can hit and the cross gets harder to read, don't hesitate to switch to the L-guard or involve the rear hand. All lead hand fighting principles apply to the rear hand when hand fighting. Get proactive with parries, use your straight punch mechanics, take the high ground when possible, keep your elbows in, control the center, and so on. Number 8, review your crossing guards. Knowing how to identify, cover, and control punch lanes is important at any range and every stage of the fight, so I'd recommend this video for anyone. But if your goal is to improve your hand fighting game, a good understanding of the crossing guard concept is critical. It'll make your commitments and transitions from patty cake to punch much safer and much less scary. The basic idea is that you don't want to cross the street, that is the opponent's punch lane or attack line, without a crossing guard, something to keep that hand busy or block its path. So before you move down or across the opponent's punch lane, be sure to block the hand you're at risk of running into. Don't worry, you'll find plenty of opportunity to cover, tap, and trap when the opponent is reaching their hands out towards you. And don't forget, proactive long parries count as crossing guards too, as the opponent cannot punch while the hand is being parried. And to learn more about this concept, please direct your attention to this video. Number 9, seize the initiative. As expert grapplers will tell you, it's usually a good idea to go first in the hand fight.
As we get our stance, the whistle blows, we come in, we're attacking 2 wrists, we're attacking 1 wrist. The guy that gets the first jump is usually the guy that wins. Benji's the same thing. He's going to want to get to those wrists. So now I'm on the defense. I'm trying to clear.
Those who act first and go for strong positions tend to get them and win exchanges. This is as true for boxers as it is for wrestlers, even if our hand fight looks a little different. Most hand fights begin in a near 50-50 situation, on equal footing. Center lines pointed dead ahead, with both fighters reaching out, balanced and alert, to play a bit of low commitment patty cake. From this position, neither fighter has the advantage, but they're both in position to try for it. Next time you're in this situation, try to seize the initiative. Of course, that doesn't mean you should rush in, swing wild, or overcommit without paying attention to timing or setup, but you should try to make the first move. Even if it's a small move, that'll get you a small advantage, whether that means snapping the hand up to high ground, moving your hand to threaten the center line, feinting hard, trying for a parry, or punching in a glove. This is the simplest tip I can offer, but I promise you it will make a big difference. Don't idle in the hand fight. Go first or get out. Finally, number 10. Don't forget the feet. We're talking about the hand fight, but the feet are still a huge part. The grappling, the feinting, and the parrying can all be very engrossing, but never forget what matters most: your distance, your stance, and your center line. Your distance will change to suit your goals, but your stance and center line must be perfect throughout the hand fight. Make sure your opponent is always on your center line and try to keep off of theirs. This won't be possible all the time, but if you stay slippery with small side steps and constantly force them to make small adjustments, you'll have far fewer power punches to deal with. Like everything in boxing, the hands and feet should work together. Use the hand fight as a screen or distraction while you step around and threaten with dominant angles. Grab handles to facilitate easy movement wherever you can, and remember to use your crossing guards to avoid collision punches while you're on the move. So that's all for now. Of course, there's a lot more to learn about this subject, but I hope these 10 tips get you started down the rabbit hole and improve the quality of your hand fighting drills. Thanks so much for watching. Bring any questions down to the comments section, and as always, stay safe, study hard, and train smart.